Estonia is a beautiful country with a history full of espionage stories, especially from its neighbor from the east, Russia. We were recently in Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, and decided to talk about the Russian embassy in Estonia and its recent espionage cases. Welcome to SpicePods. Suddenly, as you walk through the old town, you'll come across several pro-Ukraine messages. That's because this is where the Russian embassy is located. This building has been the home of the Soviet and later Russian diplomatic missions since 1921, and during the Second World War, it was the home of the Soviet Ministry of Interior. Estonia has had a very difficult relationship with its neighbor for decades, especially during the Soviet era when the country was part of the USSR, which resulted in several oppressive measures to its population. However, this relationship goes back way further. For instance, after the Great Northern War, the territory of Estonia was placed under the control of the Russian Empire, and that was in 1710. Now, being so close to Russia, it meant that it was and remains an important spy location for Russian services, even more so the last few years with the continuously increasing tensions. Every diplomatic mission has spies hidden in it. For some countries it could be 5%, for others 10%, for some even over 50%. Of course, nation-states need to find a balance since those diplomatic missions also need to perform legitimate activities like helping their nationals living there, issuing visas, liaising with local authorities and so on. In Russian spy lingo, the spies placed undercover in diplomatic missions are called legals, since they are official representatives of the Russian Federation operating under diplomatic protection. Thus, they aren't really hiding their association with Russia. They are hiding, though, their role in that mission. But let's look at a couple of recent examples that were related to this building in Tallinn, Estonia. On March 21st, 2022, Estonia expelled 3 Russian diplomats accused of espionage activities under diplomatic cover. The local press revealed the identity of one of them, Sergei Nalobin. As Russia didn't have an accredited ambassador in Tallinn at the time, Nalobin, who was holding the diplomatic rank of a minister counselor, was the chargé d'affaires at the time of his expulsion. In the international relations world, that rank serves as the embassy's chief of mission in the absence of the ambassador, so a very high-ranking position. But who was Sergei Nalobin? He was born in 1979 from a family very deep into the intelligence world. In 1996, he graduated from the Moscow School number 594. In the next 5 years, until 2001, he studied in Moscow State University of International Relations, where he graduated with excellence from the Faculty of International Law. Right after his graduation, he joined the Russian diplomatic service, and he served in diplomatic missions in Venezuela and the United Kingdom before being stationed in Estonia. He is also speaking Russian, English, Italian, and Spanish. According to this 2015 news article by The Telegraph, Russia claimed that 4 of its diplomats were forced out of London, and one of them was Sergei Nalobin. As the article says, in an unusual public attack, the Russian embassy in London accused the Home Office and Foreign Office of attempting to wreck the international order and of violating the Vienna Convention of Diplomatic Relations. And it continues that they are thought to include Sergei Nalobin, who was tasked with building relations with MPs and who was a regular fixture of the Westminster drink circuit and at political party conferences. It would be years later, in 2017, when The Guardian published this article, Brexit, the Ministers, the Professor and the Spy, How Russian Pull Strings in UK, where we read that Nalobin was also a man who, in August 2015, had his permission to stay in Britain suddenly revoked. The Home Office refused to renew the visas of 4 Russian diplomats, normally a rubber stamping exercise, Nalobin among them. The timing was not a coincidence. A week earlier, the inquiry into the death of Alexander Litvinenko concluded he was probably murdered on the personal orders of Putin. Nalobin had been a person of interest. In 2012, he was the key figure at the heart of an organization called Conservative Friends of Russia, a high-profile new group that threw a high-profile launch in the Russian ambassador's garden, the same ambassador, Alexander Yekavyenko, who was named last week in the FBI documents, and that attracted the endorsement of senior politicians including initially Malcolm Rivkin, until he resigned. Rivkin was the then chair of the Commons Intelligence and Security Committee. But the Conservative Friends of Russia was not what it seemed, and nor was Nalobin. A series of reports by The Guardian's Luke Harding and others revealed that Nalobin was intimately connected to the FSB and that the Conservative Friends of Russia was a Moscow influence operation. And what were those connections? Let's read this article from The Guardian. According to Russian press reports, Nalobin's father, Nikolai, is a successful KGB agent who reached the rank of general. Nikolai Nalobin was also a major figure in the FSB, the KGB successor agency, rising to become deputy head of the FSB department investigating economic crime. Sergei Nalobin's brother also worked for the FSB before entering private business. Reports from the Nalobin's home region, Tyumen, claim. According to Marina Litvinenko, widow of the murdered Russian dissident Alexander Litvinenko, Nikolai Nalobin was her late husband's boss. Litvinenko worked for the FSB in the 1990s before fleeing to Britain in 2000. Before his assignment in London, Sergei Nalobin was employed as special advisor to Vladimir Titov, Russia's deputy foreign minister. Titov is also the son of a celebrated KGB general. For anyone unfamiliar, 6 years after the former FSB intelligence officer Alexander Litvinenko defected to the UK with the support of the MI6, he was assassinated as we know today using polonium-210, which was strategically placed in over 40 locations in and out of London where Litvinenko could come in contact with, as he did. That was after several previously unsuccessful assassination attempts, primarily by poisoning. And just as a reminder, before defecting from the FSB, his supervisor was the father of the expelled diplomat from Estonia. In the spy world, though, it's a common unwritten rule that defectors' punishment is death. But back to Estonia, here are some shots from the moment that Sergei Nalobin was leaving Estonia in Narva at the Estonian-Russian border crossing after being declared as PNG by the Estonian government. Following the standard practice of the diplomatic world, Russian Foreign Ministry expelled 3 diplomats from the Estonian embassy in Russia, but we do not know if those were involved in any espionage activities or it was just a PNG war reaction. But why was he expelled from Estonia too? According to the New Lines magazine, an individual in Estonia who is familiar with how Nalobin operates called him extremely active. He was not like the average Russian diplomat who does not come out of the embassy and who speaks only the official talking points of the Russian Foreign Ministry. According to this person, Nalobin interacted with many people in Tallinn and tried to dig his way into high society, just as he did in London. Marko Mihkelson, chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Estonian Parliament, said that he did not come often into personal contact with Nalobin, but he noticed Nalobin's activity primarily on social media. He loved to tag me on all kinds of Russian propaganda articles that he posted, Mihkelson said. Nalobin did not respond on social media to questions posed by Estonian news site Delfi. However, the Russian embassy in Tallinn emailed one of the authors and stated that the Estonian Foreign Ministry's accusations that the expelled diplomat had been undermining Estonia's security were absurd and ridiculous. Mihkel Tamm, Director General of Public Relations for the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, said that Nalobin's background was familiar to the ministry before he was granted diplomatic accreditation. The non-issuance of visas to foreign diplomats is rather a very exceptional measure, which is always carefully considered by the host country, he said, adding that the host country expects incoming diplomats to adhere to diplomatic procedures and practices. It must always be borne in mind that in the event of a visa being refused, it can be assumed that there may be a countermeasure. Unfortunately, we do not know the identities of the other two expelled diplomats who were allegedly engaged in espionage activities too. Now, more recently, this building was also the home of another spy story. In mid-March of 2024, the Estonian Minister for Foreign Affairs, Margus Tsahkna, stated that the Russian embassy has interfered in the internal matters of Estonia in an unacceptable way. Here are his exact words from the official announcement that Estonia is expelling a member of the staff of the Russian embassy. With its actions, Russian embassy has interfered in the internal matters of Estonia in an unacceptable way. More specifically, in the judicial process, acquiring documents from a criminal case and contributing to their publication on Russian social media. I would also like to emphasize that the coordinated actions of Russia's special services against the Republic of Estonia, including hybrid operations targeting our security, are unacceptable and must end. We will not tolerate nor accept any interference in Estonia's internal matters and will respond to these kinds of situations in a quick and concrete manner. By expelling the diplomat, we are demonstrating that Estonia will not allow any actions orchestrated by a foreign state in its territory. No details of the identity of this alleged intelligence officer were provided, apart that he was stationed here under diplomatic cover and was declared as PNG. Also, we were unable to identify which exact criminal case they were referring to that was leaked to Russian social media in order to influence the Estonian judicial process. However, this has all of the hallmarks of a textbook active measures operation. Of course, spies are gonna spy, and most counterintelligence services will never PNG a spy unless they pose a serious threat to national security or there is political pressure to do so. After all, it's always better to know your enemy and keep a close eye to everything they do, instead of always trying to figure out who are the spies in each diplomatic mission. Maybe this is why the British government followed the approach of not renewing the diplomatic visa instead of declaring Nalobin as a PNG. Nevertheless, if you ever visit the beautiful city of Tallinn in Estonia, stop for a second in this building and consider how many espionage stories took place and likely still take place behind those walls. The same applies to any other diplomatic mission too, since in the world of espionage, nothing is as it seems.